Thanks, everyone, for joining us at the Project Censored radio show. I'm your co-host, Eleanor Goldfield, and we're very glad right now to be joined by Nora Barrows-Friedman, who is associate editor at the Electronic Intifada and the co-host of the Electronic Intifada podcast. And she's been covering Palestine for over 20 years as a reporter. Nora, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Eleanor.
So I wish that there were better circumstances for the invite, but the events, people are likely being inundated because no matter where you are, what bubble you exist in, the news is all Israel-Palestine. And I think it's important for especially us at the Project Censored Show, we like to be able to wade through that mess and highlight the important points that aren't being reported on, that are being censored, and that are being lied about through omission or outright. And so I wanted to invite you on because you have this important perspective and these over 20 years of experience on this topic. So let's start off with the elephant, the apartheid elephant in the room, contextualizing this situation right now, and not just because of what's going on with the genocide of Palestinians, but also contextualizing that much like men suffer under patriarchy and white folks suffer under white supremacy, contextualizing Israelis who have lost lives because of Israeli apartheid. And so I was wondering if you could give some context to this situation and really as apartheid as that root cause.
Yeah, God, what a great question. And I think that framing is exactly correct. I'm getting, inundated on my social media feeds with people who don't know that much about Palestine, and that's fine. You don't have to be an expert to have an opinion on what's happening. In terms of how Israel is constantly and relentlessly right now slaughtering Palestinians in the concentration camp in Gaza. It's okay to be outraged about that. But what I'm also seeing is that people are saying, oh, it's very complicated. There's a lot of nuance. I don't really know what to think about it. And that I think is also part of this deliberate strategy to conceal and obfuscate the very simple history of what has happened to the Palestinian people over the last century, but especially over the last 75 years. As we know, in 1947 and 1948, 800,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from their land, from their homes, their villages, their towns, their cities, their agricultural farms. And a European foreign colonizing force was allowed to prosper on their land. And Palestinians have been fighting back ever since, as any other indigenous colonized population has done in history. And also, at these times, when I think about, international law and human rights law, these are all very important entities, the United Nations and all the ratified, resolutions and what the International Criminal, beside, it seems so just like the distance from here to the moon in terms of how I'm thinking about international law right now, because you're looking at what happens, and you're looking at how international law has never even made it into the equation when it comes to the West choosing to hold Israel accountable. It doesn't. It has let and is letting right now Israel define the terms of slaughter, of Israel continue to ethnically cleanse and repeat this absolutely psychotic genocidal rhetoric at the top levels of the Israeli government, saying that they're going to wipe Gaza to the Stone Age, that they have been literally turning off the electricity and the water, the food supplies. There are no medicines going in. Gaza has been in complete darkness over the last 24 hours because there is no electricity left. People are running their hospitals on generators. people are trying, you know, I mean, I'm in contact with, sorry, I'm going off on so many tangents now, but like, I've been in contact with our friends and contributors to the Electronic Intifada constantly, you know, mostly over WhatsApp. And it's sometimes it takes 12 hours to get the read receipts on the messages that I send, because people are unable to charge their phones. Internet is completely out. Israel bombed the telecommunications services. So it's impossible for Palestinians to know even if they can get their own stories out right now. And yet we're hearing nothing about the slaughter in Gaza from the mainstream corporate news. We're hearing nothing. All we're hearing about is Israel's right to defend itself, is the inhumanity of the so-called, I'm putting them in quotes, Hamas terrorists, right? All to make it look, to manufacture consent for this genocide, to dehumanize Palestinians in such a way so that it's all collapsed. Their struggle for liberation is collapsed and perverted into this. The scary brown people want to slaughter Jews because they're Jews. It's not Palestinians' fault that their colonizers and occupiers are Jewish people. They are fighting for the struggle of liberation of their people, of their country, of their land, for their children, and for their future. And nobody is coming to defend them. And we're getting people like President Joe Biden regurgitating the lies of the Israeli military and its media apparatus. He stood there yesterday and he said that he had seen the videos and the photos of supposedly beheaded Israeli babies, right? This lie that has just sparked a wildfire around the world with no evidence, no evidence, not even to talk about what would the military strategy advantage be for the Palestinian fighters to do this. There's not even any sort of analysis. You know, people have marshmallows for brains when it comes to looking at who Palestinians are, seeing them as human. And yet Biden is fed this information. The White House confirmed yesterday that Biden actually didn't see any evidence that he claimed he did, and that whatever he had told, he had said in that press conference yesterday, was fed to him directly from Netanyahu's office, right? So we're seeing Biden and all the other leaders in the West scramble to provide cover for Israel's genocide and slaughter in the Gaza Strip, and we don't hear what's actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into, you know, where to go for legit news in a second, but I want to talk about this because this is something that we've talked about in the past, is that Zionism and the project that it created, Israel, is actually a very anti-Semitic project, and it is a danger to Jews across the globe. And I think that people have this knee-jerk reaction. You know, I have some friends in Germany who, you know, sent me pictures of that ridiculous Israeli flag on the Brandenburg Gate. And we were talking about it because they're for free Palestinian rights as well. And they said, but this is the knee-jerk reaction of a people who grew up in the shadow of Nazism. And I think that a lot of people have, maybe not as much as German people my age, but a lot of people have this knee-jerk reaction. Oh, you have to support Jews. But can you talk about how supporting Jews is necessarily the antithesis of supporting Israel?
That's a fantastic question. Yes, I mean, God, and I know we've talked about this in depth before, but it just really reveals, you know, that especially, you know, when you look at the Israeli flag being draped all over Brandenburg Gate, while, you know, 80 years ago, what was being draped over Brandenburg was the Nazi flags, right? And all the swastikas. Palestinians have had to pay the price for Germany's guilt, right? Palestinians have had to pay that price. And and Israel and its media lapdogs in the West, and the Israel lobby groups masquerading as civil rights organizations, specifically the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, have deliberately manufactured this completely deranged idea that the only safe place for Jews all over the world is on someone else's land, in a place that they're calling Israel. That's the only place that supposedly we can be safe, that we can be protected by the echoes of the Nazi genocide, right? Completely ignoring the fact that Jews should be able to be safe wherever they are in the world, and that my safety, your safety, the safety of every Jew should not ever come at the expense of someone else's danger, at someone else's genocide, someone at taking someone else's land. How are we supposed to be safe, right? In quotes, stealing someone else's home and pretending that that's just a normal civilized thing to do. And this cuts to the heart, I think, of the deepest anxiety for settlers, at least the ones who have taken over land in Palestine and have lived there, this cosplaying this fantasy of living a normal and modern and civilized life. That there is a deep anxiety in every settler that one day it will all come crashing down, that the natives have not been pacified. You can't put them in a concentration camp, seal the borders, and expect them to just die quietly, right? That how does that anxiety make anybody think rationally? And I think we do have to talk about how the Zionist project is inherently anti-Semitic, because it tells Jews that the only safe place is this apartheid, racist, settler colonial entity, and that we have no right to be in other places around the world. Collapsing the responsibility on every Jew in the world to align with the apartheid, murderous, genocidal regime of Israel, right? So the whole project itself has nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is a very convenient tool that it has used as a settler colony, as a settler colonial ideology, to steal someone else's land and slaughter the indigenous people. And so that's what and it's hard to condense that in like 140 character tweet, but people are doing a really good job on Twitter trying to remind people that this is not a war against, between Jewish victims and scary brown Muslim terrorists. It's not. This is a natural product of a 75-year campaign to ethnically cleanse indigenous Palestinians and pretend like nothing will ever happen, that there won't be any consequences, that settlers can continue to maintain a quote unquote normal, modern, civilized life. I think that facade has fallen in the last 6 days. And again, no one is coming to the defense of Palestinians. Once again, Palestinians are on their own to defend themselves. No one, and people are just like, where is the Palestinian Nelson Mandela? Where is the Palestinian Gandhi? All they know is the language of violence. Why can't they just peacefully ask? Why can't they ask nicely? They have. Palestinians have asked everyone, the international community. They can't go to the international criminal court. That's not okay for them to do. They can't ask international civil society to engage with the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. That's a bridge too far. They can't do that. They can't have peaceful, unarmed marches in Gaza in 2018, the Great March of Return. People, they brought their children, they dressed in their traditional clothing. It was a celebration of identity and struggle and a cry for justice. And what happened? The Israeli army mowed down by the hundreds, sniped people in the head, kneecapped thousands and thousands of Palestinians marching for their rights peacefully, right? Conditional support is what we're seeing. Palestinians have to be the perfect victim. They have to be the perfect population in order to elicit sympathy and compassion and solidarity from the West. And it is disgusting. I am disgusted. I am livid that support for Palestinians and their struggle for liberation is conditional. And that's what we as settlers in the West have to examine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to dig to that mindset just a little bit more, because something that I've seen a little bit on Twitter and Instagram and places like that is kind of what you had mentioned before, like this, oh, well, there's nuance, because Jews are indigenous. There's that word again, that that very woke washing word that is used, indigenous to the land that was previously known as Palestine. And as members of the diaspora, we have the right to quote unquote go home. And there's a lot of, I recommend that people read, it's a great book. It's called The Invention of the Jewish People by Shlomo Sand. It's a brilliant book. And I'm sure that there are many others that speak to this, but can you talk about that? Like, it makes my whole body go every time I hear it, but can you speak a little bit to that argument and why that also falls apart?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the most insidious arguments. And it is true that there has been, for the last 6,000 years, there have been Jews in that part of the world. Absolutely. No one is ever contesting that. Of course. And until 1948, Jews and non-Jews lived relatively peacefully as equals inside the land of Palestine. And when you speak to Palestinians, like, oh, you don't want Jews to come back, they're like, you can come. It's only when you take my land and you take my home from out from underneath my feet that we have a problem. And it's only when you take that home and that land, you install yourself on my property, and you tell me that I can't come back and I can't live as equals in my own land, then we have a problem. And it's also been just fascinating to see. And again, this is a deliberate strategy engineered by Israel lobby groups, the ADL, the Zionist Organization of America, these like very strange astroturfy organizations that are using this like quote unquote woke language to weaponize Judaism in service to ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. So you see these lobby groups, like they have it's like, they have these brochures and these like very swanky, cool social media accounts saying like Zionism is a decolonial effort, that Zionism is self-determination for the indigenous Jewish people. Absolutely not. Right? But to an uninformed public who also harbor still a lot of guilt about the Holocaust, they'll take it. They don't want to seem, anti-Semitic. Oh, these Jews are enacting their own, self-determination, and they're saying that they're decolonial, and it's just these Arab terrorists who want to kill them because they're Jews. Then it's easy to give Israel a blank check. It's easy to give Israel the benefit of the doubt. It's and because of the level of racism and Islamophobia that is so saturated in our media, it is also easier to make palatable the kind of slaughter that we're seeing against Palestinians right now. Right? If you're like, oh, this is a war of self-determination for the Jewish people, then it's easier not to have to look at the babies being pulled out of the rubble in Gaza City. It's easier not to look at the last 16 years of siege on the Gaza Strip, and I've seen them. I've been to Gaza. I've walked into the pharmacy in a hospital where they store their medications. This was in 2008. This was not even at the height of this 16-year-old siege. We were just 2 years in. And seeing I can't even remember, it was less than 10 boxes of anesthetics for surgeries left on the shelves, right? Israel counts the calories of every Palestinian in Gaza. Israel has a list of items that have been banned for the last 16 years: concrete, diapers, maxi pads, anesthetics, cancer medication, dialysis machines, basic medical supplies. I was following the Twitter account of a plastic surgeon in Gaza. I believe he's Palestinian, but born and raised in the UK, and he goes to Gaza periodically to offer his services whenever needed. And unfortunately, this is a regular thing. And he was there talking about how he needed to clean the wounds of a teenage girl who was brought to the hospital with severe burns all over her body from these Israeli airstrikes. And they ran out of the iodine, solution days ago. And so he was forced to clean her body with soap, regular soap. I mean, the level of sadism that Israel has for the people in Gaza and in the West Bank and those with Israeli citizenship inside the state itself. The level of sadism that it is allowed to enact, these colonial fantasies of shredding Palestinians to bits, of laughing while they do it, is just, it's sick. It's sick, and it points to the core sickness of Zionism itself.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point, which is this isn't a war really, because a war suggests that there are even sides,
right?
That and it's just like, it's so twisted too, because a lot of the things that you're talking about, like the sadism of the Israeli state, is exactly the sadism that we saw in the Holocaust.
Yes. And that we saw against people in Iraq and
right.
Afghanistan and Vietnam. Like, it's just that there is historical precedent, and this all points to the sadism of the West, of the imperial forces, of these settler colonial entities that think that they can get away with slaughtering indigenous people because they can, because they have been. It's atrocious, and it just yeah, I mean, I just run out of words at times like these.
Yeah, I don't think words were meant for this, these kind of situations. And so I'm curious, what do you feel, what can people do about this, and in particular those of us who are Jewish and are confronted? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been inundated from both sides. Of course, you're a self-hating Jew and you blah 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 blah. But then also I've been inundated from folks on the left, not inundated, but folks on the left who say that there should be no space for grieving any lives lost, like Israeli civilians, for instance. And so it's like this double inundation, and I feel like what we're witnessing is kind of like dehumanization winning. And that makes me so sad, and it makes me so angry, because I think if anything, we have to keep our humanity, and without letting it overshadow the struggle for Palestinian justice and freedom. So I'm curious, in particular, from that Jewish perspective, what do you feel that we need to be doing right now?
I think those of us who are anti-Zionist, publicly or privately, need to be doing the most right now. We need to be the ones having those really hard conversations with our family. We need to be the ones who are asking tough questions of people who have been dehumanizing Palestinians, whether it's in our synagogues, whether it's in our schools, whether it's in our families. There's also, like, I mean, for me, I was telling you right before we started recording that, like, people show their true selves in times like these. People who you thought loved you and respected you and learned from you, are completely in lockstep with what Israel's doing. And they're using their Jewish identity as a cudgel to not only give Israel the green light, but to absolve themselves of any responsibility. When Israel claims you as someone who should be saved and protected by the state, you have the responsibility not to let them do that, and to fight back with everything you have, whether it's having these conversations, whether it's defriending whoever you need to defriend. I don't need these people in my life anymore. I don't need these people who yell at me that I'm an Arab lover and a terrorist level. These very racist tropes. You swap Arab for the N-word. This is what they mean. I don't need these people in my life. You don't need these people in your life. People are showing who they really are, and it's hard, and they are on the wrong side of history. And one day, when Palestine is free, which every day we're one day closer to that, which is something that I have to remember in my head to keep me going, they'll say, I was really mistaken there. I'm really sorry. Or they won't. They'll shut up about it. There are a lot of apparently anti-apartheid South Africans, white South Africans right now. I didn't know there were so many, right? Because they were enjoying their life of colonial power until the natives fought back and won. And this is what we're seeing now in Palestine. And it's incredibly difficult. And I think, especially as a Jewish American person who understands what's happening in Palestine, you don't have to be an expert again, but if you look at how Israel is using us to further this project of colonialism and imperialism and apartheid, it is incumbent upon us to push back.
Yeah, absolutely. And so finally wrapping up here, I'm curious if you have suggestions, because there is just so much, whether it be decapitating babies or what have you. There is so much, lie sounds like too nice of a word, really.
Yeah.
Just like
I know. We don't even have the
atrocious.
language to describe
Yeah, no,
this.
I don't. So where should people look for legitimate news? I know that you said it's difficult for people to even share their stories now, but where obviously electronic intifada, but where can folks go for legitimate news on this?
Yeah, definitely check us out at electronicintifada.net. We're doing regular live streams with our contributors in Gaza who are able to grab 1 bar, of data and 5% left battery on their phone. It's really important that people hear these voices. So go to our YouTube page. Our Twitter is @Intifada. We're on Instagram at Electronic Intifada. There are also, outlets. Al Jazeera is doing a fine job, and you can get the live stream online. It's not that hard. There are incredible social media creators. Follow people who are protecting the right to resist on social media. I mean, there are so many ways that you can, go to Jewish Voice for Peace, for example. There's an incredible new organization called Jews Against White Supremacy, JAWS. They're on social media as well. They have incredible statements and resources that you can spark conversations with your family with. It's really important that we get a way to cut through this propaganda machine. I know that, the boomers in my life, in my family, are glued to MSNBC and CNN, and it's really hard to get them to switch off, but please do your best. Send them this episode, send them the live stream videos that we have on the Electronic Intifada. It's really important that people find alternate sources of information that don't have ties to the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government and these forces that are doing a deliberate job of bringing false information, of smearing Palestinians, of dehumanizing Palestinians. It's just really important to make an effort to get out there.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. And I think just to kind of go back to something that you said, that there's no safety in genocide. And so if family members or if people who are on the fence are worried about Jewish safety around the globe, well, then it's a very simple answer. Israel as an apartheid state must end. So
yeah, absolutely.
Nora, thank you so much for taking the time. If there's any other links or suggestions that you'd like to share, please let us know. But everyone, please do check out Electronic Intifada. Nora and the folks there do amazing and incredibly vital work, particularly at a time like this.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. You do incredible and vital work as well. Thank you.